Ohio State is canceling their future out-of-conference SEC opponents and Alabama and Georgia in 2027, 2028, 2030, and 2031, according to a report by Austin Ward out of Letterman Row, the On3 affiliate of Ohio State football. All right, or basketball too, I guess. All right, so I do want to say, I'm going to talk about this situation, but I do want to try to make the disclaimer. I am not defending this. A lot of Ohio State fans are probably going to watch this, and I do not want Ohio State fans to think I am like defending this, and I think this should happen. But I am going to talk about this from the standpoint of why this whole decision is being made. Disclaimer is this sucks. I don't like it. I don't want this to happen. I don't want college football to lose out of conference games and, for there not to be big games to be played on the outside. But at the end of the day, like college football is changing. College sports in general is changing. We just had the story of Amari Bailey and what's going on there. And if you're somebody that's trying to hold on to college football 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I think you're just going to end up being disappointed because we're never going to get back to the BCS. We're never going to get back to the 14 playoff. And quite honestly, with the playoffs expanding, it's just going to continue to change college football in a lot of ways. And one of the biggest ways is that it's an unfortunate reality of the system right now that has been created, which is, big games don't truly matter. Out of conference big games don't truly matter because they don't reward aggressive scheduling while handing out millions of dollars in financial reward for those making the college football playoffs, however you get there. Because at the end of the day, you can make money off having a team come and play you in your stadium, but that's going to pale in comparison to the check that you get in the college football playoffs, right? And so what's going to help you more, winning a game against Marshall or losing a game possibly against Texas, right? This is the Big Ten's effort, essentially. All right. Ohio State is eager to get more involved in the decision-making of the Big Ten Conference, and this is Ohio State's effort to try and make that happen. If you listen to my guy, Greg Flugar, over at Peek Around the Corner, you know that Greg has been talking about this for a little while, that Ohio State is very much so in conjunction with the Big Ten right now in some of their decision making. And so Ohio State is trying to comply with being the example for other big schools in the Big Ten, which is cancel your out-of-conference games so that way the Big Ten can further do what they want to do moving forward. And also the idea that playing big games in your out of conference doesn't actually do all that much for you. You look at teams this season like Texas A&M. You look at teams this season like Miami, right? You beat that team and their reputation goes down and other teams pass them up because they beat teams that are worse than them, right? Texas lost to Ohio State. Now, sure, they continue to play bad the next few weeks against some group of 5 opponents and stuff like that, but their reputation was shot in a matter of a few weeks because they lost that game. And then you see the rest of the season, nobody wanted to give Ohio State any credit for beating a good team in the very first game of the season because they just want to say, well, actually, Texas wasn't all that good, right? And then similar stuff for Cal or for Minnesota. Minnesota had something similar happen where they lost to Cal, and everybody thought, well, Cal's actually a really bad football team, so Minnesota must suck, right? When in reality, yes, Minnesota lost that game, but they also recovered and improved as a team and finished the season 7-5. Did they deserve to be ranked? No, not necessarily. But people didn't need to look at that Minnesota team and say, oh, they lost to Cal, they suck, right? Because people are going to think better about you if you beat Utah State, Marshall, and, South Dakota. They're going to think better of you for doing that than if you win 2 games and then lose to Colorado or something like that. So the rankings have shown that they care more about your record than your wins. And I know that this was kind of an ESPN talking point a little bit for stuff like they wanted to look at more of the wins than the record. But Indiana, like they started this whole thing, and Indiana has clearly benefited from this. And I've been vocal on my opinions on the Indiana scheduling. I don't like it. I want Indiana to play better teams in the out of conference, but I understand it. And that's kind of where I'm at with this with Ohio State too. Is like, I don't like that Ohio State is canceling these big out-of-conference games against Alabama and Georgia. I want them to play these big games. They're more exciting. They're better. Seeing these huge matchups in the out-of-conference is kind of what gets you excited for college football sometimes at the very beginning of the season. But at the end of the day, it doesn't help these teams out to get to the college football playoffs. The strategy that Indiana has implemented, play 3 easy teams and then get into your conference play and really kind of earn it in conference play, has benefited Indiana. Heck, they were just the number 1 seed in the playoffs, right? They didn't play anybody in the out of conference, and they were just the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Now, granted, they beat Ohio State to get there, but still, they were still there. So it goes to show that as long as your record is good and you're in the Power 4 conference like the Big Ten, that's what matters most. Not necessarily about who you beat or anything like that. Really, the only team that exception was made for this season was Alabama. And Alabama lost their out of conference game because they did so well in the conference and everybody thought the SEC is so good, they were fine. To me, the Big Ten is making this change for 3 reasons. The Big Ten's making it for 3 reasons. Number one, for the time being, the SEC lacks the games advantage for the next year or 2, right? And the Big Ten gets it. For years, the SEC had the game advantage. They played less conference games. They played the Citadel and other FCS teams in the middle of November before they played their rivalry games. And nobody ever said anything about it. Big Ten fans like me said it all the time. They're like, you have to notice this stuff. But because the perception of the SEC was it's so good, it didn't matter. And one of the reasons why the perception of the SEC was so good is because they only played 8 conference games. Yeah, they won big games too, even their credit. They won big games. But at the end of the day, your record is what people look at more than anything else, especially a lot of these committees and people that vote on rankings and everything else. Like your record is what matters to people more than anything else. And if you can get rid of 1 less loss for half of your conference, it's going to make your conference look a whole lot better. The wins you get. And if you lose to a team like Florida, right, who wasn't a good football team this past year, it's not going to look as bad. Another thing that the Big Ten wants to change is the Big Ten wants to add a 10th conference game as they continue to expand. It's not a very big secret right now that the Big Ten wants to keep expanding. They want to keep getting bigger. They want to keep doing more things and adding more teams. Well, the entire idea is, well, how are we going to add more teams if we're only playing 9 conference games? It's not enough. And so the Big Ten is trying to get Big Ten teams to cancel their big out of conference games. So that way they're not playing 11 Power 4 teams. You've seen how that's worked for Purdue. They've done that a couple times the last few seasons. It's not worked out very well for them because it's a lot. Even if you are playing a Virginia Tech, even if you are playing a Virginia, it's still a Power 4 team. It's still a lot, right? And the final thing is that, and this is probably the one that will make the people the most upset, but it's just a reality. And again, I'm not saying I like this. I'm just, talking about the reality of college football right now, is that the Big Ten doesn't want to see their biggest cash cow in Ohio State go and play on ESPN and not see any benefit from it, right? The Big Ten sees less financial incentive in out-of-conference games in the regular season than they do in the postseason. So instead of having your biggest cash cow and TV ratings in Ohio State go to Texas and be on ESPN, they say, well, let's actually have them play Kent State, Ball State, and Southern Illinois. I forget who their other team they play this season is. We're going to make more money off them doing that in the out of conference and then making the playoffs. And then sure, ESPN can have some stuff, right? But as we talked about, also, if the playoffs get expanded, Fox, CBS, and NBC can possibly buy some rights to the first round of the playoffs, and that could help them out there as well. At the end of the day, I feel like this all could have been avoided with automatic qualifiers. And that's one of the reasons why I advocated for automatic qualifiers so much. And I still do advocate for it. A lot of people said, well, it would get rid of, the meaning of the out of conference games and everything else. And my response was always, you're not going to have big out of conference games without automatic qualifiers. You're not going to have that because teams are not going to risk their perception by going out there and playing those games. Teams are more likely to miss the college football playoffs losing an out-of-conference game than by winning one, right? A team like Miami won their out-of-conference game. They barely made the playoffs, and they only got into the playoffs because Notre Dame got pushed back for a bozo reason that Alabama was up 17 points on Auburn, right? And BYU lost, and BYU fell down, but Alabama didn't fall down in the rankings after the conference championship game. That was the only reason Miami got in. Miami was not going to get in for a long period of time there. But because they moved BYU down, And it would have looked bad to have Miami and Notre Dame right there next to each other. They swapped the two and they put Miami in front of them. Like, I know a lot of people aren't going to like this argument because not a lot of people like this team last year, and I get it. But like, if Texas doesn't schedule Ohio State in the out of conference, they go 10-2. They have a win over Oklahoma. They're in the playoffs. They remain over Oklahoma at 10-2. Because if you have the same record as another team, you will typically get ranked above them. Most times, right? Miami wasn't ranked above Notre Dame for a while, but they ended up that way. And Texas beat Oklahoma. So if you're looking at the record thing, the way they structure these things out, with Alabama was 10-2 and they were right behind Oklahoma because Oklahoma beat them. Well, Texas beat Texas A&M. Texas beat Oklahoma. They would probably be up there in the top 10 if they wouldn't have lost to Ohio State. And who knows? They may not have moved as far down if, for some of their performance against those group of 5 teams, and maybe they wouldn't have performed like that against those group of 5 teams. So, the Big Ten plans for non-conference games to essentially go away for bigger matchups because they want those matchups to happen in the playoffs. It further brings the Big Ten away from the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC. It's what the SEC has been talking about for a while. But if you follow college football and you follow the conferences a lot, you know that the SEC is the group that gets out there and speaks and talks about it. And meanwhile, the Big Ten is the one that gets out there and doesn't really say anything. They just act and they put it out there and they do things. And that's what they're doing here. And also there's some leverage in this too, that if ESPN wants to make money off the Big Ten, they need to put pressure on the SEC to expand the playoffs. So it's all a money thing for the Big Ten. And a lot of people are going to blame the Big Ten here. And don't get me wrong, the Big Ten does have blame. I'm not happy with the Big Ten based on this stuff either. I get it. I understand it. It makes sense, but I don't like it because I want to see big games. And I don't want the history of out of conference games to be ripped away from us. But that's probably what's going to happen. But the real enemy here is what Zach and I have been saying for years now. It's the NCAA. The NCAA is the real enemy here because they never centralized scheduling. They lost power over time with outdated beliefs, trying to have student athletes and this, that, and the other. And they completely lacked governance, allowing the SEC to have clear benefits with no repercussions. To let the SEC have 8 conference games all those years and never put anything on them or anything, and just continue to kind of let it be a playing field and everything else. A lot of people blame the Big Ten and said, well, the Big Ten, it's their fault because they went to 9 conference games. Okay. Are we going to blame the SEC now for the same thing, that they went to 9 conference games and added a forced Power 4 opponent? Or are we going to continue to blame the Big Ten? Because that's what everybody does. Because that's what the media does. Because nobody wants to go against Greg Sankey, right? But at the end of the day, it really is the NCAA's fault. Because the NCAA never stepped in with any of this stuff, And even when they could have stepped in with, agents and NIL and everything else, they never stepped in with that either. And so it's just a complete lack of understanding, a complete lack of ability, a complete lack of effort by the NCAA altogether. So the Big Ten's going to get a lot of heat on this. And like I said, I don't think the Big Ten is rosy clear in this either. But I think the real enemy here is the NCAA. Dr. Fakin says NCAA equals expired joke, what they let UNC get away with fake classes with proof of how corrupt they were. Yeah, exactly. It's not just that. Like, there's so many other things. And at the end of the day, the NCAA has never really been able to put rules in place, right? The NCAA has never actually been able to enforce their rules because so many different programs are breaking them. And that's the same thing that the CSC is going to have happen. And I remember talking about the House settlement, talking about how, guys, this is just the beginning of what's being formed here. And while it's not looked great so far, it is the process of getting rid of the NCAA. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create the CSC. It's not working so far, but it also wasn't supposed to work right away. The entire thing with the House settlement and the CSC, the College Sports Commission, which is essentially going to become the new NCAA, is all this stuff. So Fight on 90 says A&M is just another overrated, overhyped SEC program. And they get overrated and they get overhyped because they face teams in the SEC were in the bottom half, but because the SEC had a perception that they were just better than everybody else because of their records. Look at how many bowl teams we have and everything else because of their records. They get overhyped, they get overrated. But you look at the games against the spread and stuff like that the past few years, the Big Ten has been steadily building up. And the Big Ten actually had the best record against the spread this season of any conference. The SEC was third. It went the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC was last. Joe says, I don't understand the argument that Notre Dame deserved to be in the CFP over Alabama. Alabama was the SEC runner-up. That should get you in the playoffs. I don't know if I would say that Notre Dame deserved to be in. I just thought Notre Dame was a better football team. Right? So if I said they deserved to be in, I apologize for that. I shouldn't have said that. Because I do think deserving is a really slippery slope there. But I felt like Notre Dame was a better football team than Alabama this season. I think Notre Dame lost both their games early on in the season to other college football playoff teams. One of them was kind of a bogus one because of the holding, right? And so that whole situation happened. And I think you saw Notre Dame get better throughout the year. I thought you saw them perform better against USC. Dr. Fakin says Alabama won against Georgia and Notre Dame did nothing like that. Right. But they also lost to Florida State. Right. And Georgia beat them in the SEC championship, which, shouldn't disqualify you. But when Alabama is the only team ever to lose a conference championship game and not move down in the rankings, like, you guys are making great points here. I look at the history and say, how did every single team that has lost a conference championship game drop in the rankings except for Alabama? And you can go back and look at it. I mean, go back and look at the college football playoff rankings. So again, I don't think it was necessarily that Notre Dame deserved to be in over Alabama. If I said that was the wrong wording. I just felt like Notre Dame was a better team. And I felt like Alabama was kind of overrated all season. So, and quite frankly, I thought Oklahoma was overrated all season too. Guess what? I thought the entire SEC was overrated. So, you know me. That's how I work out. So, all right. So that's what I got for you guys. Curious your thoughts on all of it.